The president's approval rating, according to the Real Clear Politics average, was 42%. His disapproval rating was 54%. That's a spread of 12 points. After a full month of all the cable news morons calling him Hitler, Trump's approval rating rose to 43%. That's one of the highest of his presidency. And his disapproval dropped to 52%. That's a spread of 9 points, an improvement over the beginning of the month. But here's the remarkable part. In the Harvard-Harris poll, the president's approval rating rose 10 points among Hispanic voters. Keep in mind, this is over the exact same period when every single person with a master's degree in the continental United States was telling you that Trump hates Hispanics. And yet his number among Hispanic voters rose 10 points. Amazing. Could it be that the cable news dummies don't really understand the country they pretend to report on? Could it be that Hispanic Americans are pretty much like every other American, normal people who love their country and know that illegal immigration hurts all of us? It looks that way. That's bad news for Democrats who are betting that a campaign of hysteria and race baiting would move voters to the polls on their behalf in November. It hasn't worked. Will the left figure out that it hasn't worked? Maybe, but maybe not. They've grown so confident that Trump is finished, over, done, that they're no longer hiding what they really think. They pulled off the mask and they're telling you directly. Calls to halt family separation turned almost immediately into demands to end deportation itself, to abolish ICE, abolish profit, abolish prisons. The left believes that voters are so angry at Trump that they want to abolish the country that elected him and replace it with an entirely new country where borders and business, where the law itself all no longer exist. They're betting that most voters hate Trump so much that they've come to hate America too. That's their gamble. As of tonight, it is not paying off.
Joining us now with more exclusively is Congressman Devin Nunes. Congressman, it's great to see you. Now, I know people watching across the country, they're getting ready for 4th of July. They're thinking, Devin Nunes wants more information. I'm playing devil's advocate here. When will it end? It's like you're always complaining about documents. Now you're complaining about people. But there are a lot of people on this list that are new names to people, like Victoria Nuland. Tell us why you want her to testify.
Well, first of all, I want to make sure the American people know that this is just this one more step in the process. I think we've been very transparent about how we've conducted this process. We went on to FISA abuse and other matters. I've said for a long time that we're looking at the State Department. When we began looking at the State Department, you had Victoria Nuland and a few other people who decided to go out and talk about things publicly, which actually helped our investigation out quite a bit. The reason why is because we still don't understand how this investigation was actually opened. But we know that many people in the Obama-era State Department were involved in the opening of that investigation. So it all comes down to how did the information make it from supposedly an Australian High Commissioner or ambassador to the FBI. So we know that that didn't come through what I would call Five Eyes intelligence. It wasn't real intelligence product. It somehow short-circuited that process. We also know that many people in the State Department were meeting with Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele is the person who was hired by the Democrats to dig up dirt on President Trump. So this is why this investigation is taking a while. But the good thing is that I believe that Chairman Gowdy and Goodlatte, their task force, will interview these people, and they will interview them in public. So it will be the first time during this entire investigation that the American people get to see actual questions get answered to these potential witnesses.
Again, State Department. Now, why would the State Department be involved with the Christopher Steele dossier issue? Again, phony dossier. Christopher Steele, MI6, worked as an agent, supposedly has all these Russian sources. And why would this woman, Elizabeth Dibble, be on your list, who was, I think, was she the director, the deputy chief of the mission in London for the State Department? That seems like someone you might be looking at for one of the, people put into the Trump campaign, allegedly, as a informant, correct?
Well, I wouldn't go there, but two parallel tracks here, and you kind of touched on both of them. So one, we have the London episode. Somehow information made it from the Australian government to the FBI. We believe that went through London, and somehow went to the Obama State Department that then ended up in the Justice Department. So that's one track. The second track is Christopher Steele. What on earth was Christopher Steele doing meeting with State Department officials, and why was the Steele dossier that supposedly the FBI was trying to get their hands on, why was it also going through the State Department? So a lot of people had their hands on the Steele dossier, including many people in the media who knew about the Steele dossier. And this is really a collapse. What we're having to do here as the legislative branch of government, we're having to do the work that the media won't do, because there are very few in the media who will actually cover this story to try to get to the bottom of it. And that's part of what's taking so long. Typically, you would have a free and fair and transparent media trying to get to the truth, but in this case, we haven't had that.
So Jonathan, is it Weiner was on your list? Who is he? And I guess it was several months ago, he said he's being unfairly targeted by you.
Yeah, that was quite interesting that he thought that we were targeting him, because at the time we weren't sure exactly what he knew or didn't know, but thankfully he was very clear in the statements that he made that he was one of the people that was looking at the Steele information and was conveying that information in some form or fashion to the FBI. So look, we want to interview these folks. These folks work for the American taxpayer.
But how do you compel that, Congressman?
They were paid by the American taxpayer.
I'm sorry, you can subpoena them?
They're going to testify. I mean, well, they can plead the fifth, but this isn't going to be like the documents where we've had to continue to fight with the Justice Department in order to have access to documents. This is much different. These are all American citizens. They will, if they do not agree to appear under oath and testify, then they will be subpoenaed. That I can tell you for sure.
I want to get your reaction to something Adam Schiff, Congressman Schiff, ranking Democrat on your committee, said about you and your colleagues last week on CNN.
The four horsemen of this apocalypse have been Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy, Mark Meadows, and Jim Jordan. They have been leading the charge basically to require the Justice Department to give them materials that can be leaked or fed or misrepresented, like the infamous Nunes memorandum, in the service of the president. And in the meantime, they do enormous damage to these institutions. Ultimately, they'll be held accountable.
Sounds like a threat, Congressman.
Yeah, we're not going to be threatened by the Democrats. I mean, look, they're the ones that have all this blood on their hands. They're the ones who have completely destroyed the FBI and DOJ. How did they do that? They did that by digging up dirt. The Clinton campaign dug up dirt, put it into a dossier, fed it into the FBI, and the FBI used our counterintelligence capabilities against a political campaign. That's what happened here. So the Democrats in the House and the Senate, they've continued to want to obfuscate. They've continued to want to cover up. If it was we listened to the Democrats, we would have never even found out that the Democrats and Hillary Clinton paid Christopher Steele to generate this dirt on President Trump. So I tend to ignore everything that they say. We continue to do our work day in and day out to get to the truth. And gradually we're getting to the truth. And I believe as these hearings take place and testimony is given to the Congress, I think it will be a much needed sunlight in this investigation. I think the American people will begin to see who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth.
Well, Congressman, I think we all want it in open session. I mean, a lot of people are getting tired of this closed session deal where the American people are kept in the dark, and then people come out and somehow mysteriously we hear kind of little bits and pieces about what happens or the flavor of what happened behind closed doors. Would someone like a Victoria Nuland, other Obama State Department people, and maybe even that Joseph Pietka, who interviewed Michael Flynn, he could, sources tell me, he could be a potential whistleblower to tell what he actually understood in that interview, namely, reportedly, that Michael Flynn did not lie.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I agree with you 100%, and that's partly why I am sending these names over to the Judiciary and Oversight Committee because they already have a task force. The task force has been convened. They should be able to do all of these hearings in the public, full transparency, so that people can watch on live television. That is my recommendation to the committee chairman. I believe they will follow that recommendation, and they may have other names. So far, we've sent them the 17 plus the 10, it's 27 names we've sent them. We will be
All right.
sending them more names here later this week.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.